You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Hi, Kim. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, thank you. I want to get your perspective from the sidelines about several topics in medical field that are going on right now. And before we do this and dive into these issues, I want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you started doing what you're doing right now.
Sure. So I'm a pediatric physical therapist by training, and I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in the fall of 2020. And three of my parathyroids were inadvertently removed, and that caused a series of complications with calcium regulation and kidney function. And that kind of started a domino of events over the next year. And I blacked out and fell. Low calcium caused a cardiac arrhythmia, and I had neck issues and dizziness. Went to 4 months of PT myself. And then by December 29th, 2021, I was discharged from physical therapy and thought I'd be moving on, but I had been diagnosed with breast cancer. So then I needed surgery and a month of radiation for that. And then as soon as that was over, the next month I needed another MRI and I had breast cancer on the other side. So I had surgery and a month of radiation for that. So I'm sharing the minimum, but it was really 2 years of constant medical issues and tests and scans and blood work and everything. So after 2 solid years of that, when I thought I'd finally be moving forward, I developed a friendly relationship with my radiologist over the past 6 months. And I showed up for what I thought would be routine imaging. And I was looking forward to seeing him. And I live in Connecticut, but when I went over the border to New York just for him to read my images, and he wasn't there. And when I asked where he was, they said he died a month ago. And I was in shock. I actually said, "Are you joking?" Because I couldn't believe it. And they said no, of course. And then I asked what happened, and they said they didn't know. And in that moment in my heart, I knew that he had died by suicide, and I came to find out that was true. And it changed my whole life. In that moment, I couldn't stop crying or shaking. My arms and legs went numb. I feel like I was in partial shock, and then they found something that was moderately suspicious for cancer that day, and I needed another biopsy. And I wasn't so resilient anymore, but I connected with Dr. Michael Hirsch. He's a GI doctor in Chicago who coaches physicians. And over those next few months, he helped me process and accept a lot of things. He connected me on LinkedIn. I wanted to talk to doctors to see if they could help me help my own doctors. And then I started connecting them, and it snowballed from there. So now I started Stand Up for Doctors. I have a podcast, a Substack newsletter. We've written 2 books, and I'm planning a physician retreat for this fall.
That's amazing. And I'm really sorry about what happened to you in the past, and I'm sure everything is, better now, hopefully. But it's interesting how this whole thing led to a new path, right, for you. It, it's um it's a calling, I would say, that you have, and I'm sure a lot of people in medical field will need your help in this because it's a big issue in in this field with people that are not coping very well with the stress of the profession, with the stress of the daily lives that they need to go through, like your radiologist, right? And we don't know how to help. We don't know what to do. And most people are asking around colleagues, friends, family, with no real expertise in this. And I think it's important to have someone who is very specialized in treating those kind of issues, especially depression, suicide thoughts in medical professionals, and the whole issue of burnout, I would say, although the term burnout is so vague that I want you to kind of explain to me and to us what exactly do you think it is? And what do you think we deal with right now in terms of burnout and depression?
Sure. So, burnout, there's a technical definition, but also there's some doctors who don't like the term burnout. They feel it's moral injury, but there is a difference. And so, burnout, anyone can be burnt out in their job, right? There could be, excessive demands, and there's like, specific criteria. But moral injury is, when you're like prevented from doing something or forced to do something that kind of goes against like your moral values. And that started with veterans when they came, when they'd go to war and they were forced to do things that might have gone against their morals. So when they came back, they had these internal struggles. So now, of course, there's sometimes where doctors know what medication they want for their patients or they know their patient needs surgery. But when insurance or something prevents them and says, no, you have to try this other medication, and that they know their patient is going to suffer longer, or they say, no, try 6 weeks of physical therapy when it would be obvious that this person needs surgery. So there's things like that. It can even be life threatening. So that's how there is a difference between burnout and moral injury. But they're both important to address. And doctors also don't like the term resilience because they say like we're the most resilient, some of the most resilient people on the planet. But resilience can mean moving through a challenging time and coming out stronger. So there are things they can do, like a lot of doctors understandably and appropriately say the system needs to change. And it does. And so they might want to blame the system for their burnout, for the moral injury, and all of that. Like that can be true. But at the same time, there are many things that individual doctors can do to shore themselves up. So it's so important. And that's why I've become an ambassador for the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation, and they have wonderful resources on their website. And it's important to know for doctors to know that they're working very hard to remove the intrusive questions on the back of licenses. And they want every healthcare professional to be able to seek safe and confidential mental health support.
Yeah, this is something that I struggle with in terms of like ethical questions because many of those people that are having those kind of mental issues in their profession, when they address it, they they are faced with a lot of embarrassment, a lot of talks behind their backs from their colleagues and from their peers, and it feels more like a rejection type of feel, right, from the rest of the colleagues, which automatically brings up the fear in themselves not to talk about it anymore
Mm-hmm.
because it creates all those kind of reactions. So what is to do for someone who feels like they need to talk to someone and they need to get this public or raise awareness about these issues with other people?
Right. So one thing I would like people to know, so I say so often that every time a doctor shares their story, another doctor feels less alone. And that's what I try to do through my podcast. I've had physicians on who have attempted to take their own life, and sadly, even more than once, I've had physicians on who have had various addictions. And they talk about anything, crying in the bathroom, at work, not knowing how they're going to go on. Any struggle the average person has, your doctor might have them too because they're people. And that's through these stories in our book. That's what I love about it is individual doctors are sharing their stories. So when doctors read these stories, they'll see themselves in there. And so many times they walk around saying, I thought it was just me, or they were told to put their head down and just keep going. But by talking about these things, and I do feel like the pandemic did open it up, talking about mental health in general for the public and also for physicians. Many more physicians are sharing their story. And to your point, one thing that Dr. Heath Joliffe said in the endorsement for our first book is that this book's message is powerful. Physicians are speaking up not because it's easy, but because the staying silent costs too much. So I feel like they are, and we talk about in these books and in the podcast episodes, like you said, the fear of feeling vulnerable, the fear of shame. But doctors are starting to say, being vulnerable doesn't mean I have to tell you everything. But if you let bits and pieces of yourself show, oftentimes you'll be surprised at the positive response that you receive, or other doctors will come to you and say, me too, or thank you for sharing that. So, and shame is baked into medical culture, from medical training, med school and residency, and that needs to change. I say the culture of medicine needs to change beginning in med school, but for any individual physician, if they're struggling, they need to reach out. And Dr. Amna Shabir has shared when you're feeling really low, even reaching out can feel like too much work, but you have to do it. So the first step would be to talk to anyone who you feel is a safe person, whether it's a friend, a colleague, a pastor, a coach, a therapist, a psychiatrist, someone. And if you don't have someone who is safe, there's so many of us who could, I could direct them to someone. I'm sure you could. There's Physicians Anonymous, the Dr. Lorna Breen Foundation page. Like I said, they have a list of free and confidential resources. So that's a good way to get started.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to put down some resources that you recommend of people to address to
Sure.
whoever is listening right now might go through something like this can reach out. I want to go back to yourself, Kim, a little bit, and then explore the way you dealt with your struggles, right? Because you had several medical issues and you came out stronger out of them, and thought about doing something like what you're doing right now to help others. What does it mean to you to do this kind of things right now from where you came from?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking because as I talk to so many doctors, I see myself in them. And actually, in middle school, I wanted to be a pediatrician, but I didn't want to go to school all the years to be a doctor. So I ended up being a pediatric physical therapist. But so many of like, between the type A and perfectionist tendencies, like I see myself in that so much. So I was a person who always walked around and generally was fine, pretended I was fine, was the one to help other people, like, oh, or even at church, I'll make the casserole, or at work, I'll do this or I'll do that. And then, though, when I had these health issues, and it was one thing on top of another, and then the tamoxifen they put me on to reduce recurrence of the breast cancers damaged my uterus. A year ago, I needed a total hysterectomy, and even now I'm in the midst of more testing. But it was really the struggles between some things that happened with my first surgery, and it was a shock, also losing, my parathyroids. I wasn't prepared for that. And so I needed to process and accept some of those things. And while I was still struggling with that, when my doctor died, all of a sudden I wasn't okay anymore, like in my own brain. And just like doctors or other people will say, like on the surface, you can look and act like yourself, and other people might see you smiling, but inside it feels different. And I had never experienced that before, and I didn't know what to do or how to help myself. So, but I wanted to try. I wanted to feel better and get back to my regular self. So, during the time I was going through cancer treatment, we have a local cancer support center, and everything was free. So, I tried things like I tried meditation. They had a little art. I took piano lessons. And then I also ordered a lot of self-help books, everything from, Brene Brown, Daring Greatly, or The Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts. And I had a friend at church who had read a book that Clarity by Jamie Smart, and she came to my house and we had academic discussions about some of it. And also, I decided I will tell people that I'm struggling, and I'm part of a women's fellowship group. And during the pandemic, they were there every week and weren't really spending as much time in person with friends or family, but we did a Zoom. So, like, connection mitigates trauma. And that is so important. So that I had people and our pastors that I decided, okay, I do need help. I'm not going to pretend I'm okay. And that was a little bit hard to, say these things out loud. But again, everyone, they were supportive and they were helpful. But I have to say it was when I connected with Dr. Michael Hirsch and through the coaching that he really helped me get my brain back to the way it was. He helped me move forward. It's not something you get over, losing your doctor to suicide. And it's a disenfranchised grief because normally you're grieving with friends and family, but nobody in my life knew him. And that was an extra layer of struggle. You can't talk to, people about him. They didn't know him. So Michael helped me really process and accept things related to some medical traumas that I had and also my doctor. And so then as I got better, I just thought this is horrible and I care about my own doctors and I want them to be okay. So now that's why I'm trying to do everything in my power. It was a calling to support physicians.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like, and you probably saw this after the pandemic, the things changed a little bit in their mentality of practicing physicians. Like a lot of them thought twice if they want to continue to do what they're doing after this kind of stop in lives of, the whole population, right? And everybody had a little more time to kind of retrospectively think about their lives and what they want to do and how they want to live their lives. And I feel like a lot of people changed their course at that point. Um, what is your experience with the post-pandemic mental health of medical professionals?
So, yeah, so to your point, a lot of people left medicine, and then a lot of them were able to slow down a little bit. They either were forced to see less patients, because this is when I was just starting all of this, and they had to clean a room in between patients and wait 15 minutes, right? So their caseloads were reduced. And so some of them sought out coaching at the time or therapy. And then some doctors who became coaches then decided it really impacted their life and they wanted to help other physicians. So then they became physician coaches, or doctors might have looked into investing and did side ventures. And some decided to work part time, go part time. So doctors I think, took the pandemic to, like you're saying, reassess their own lives and made all different kinds of decisions, which is great because doctors and everyone else, you always have more power than you think you do. And that's what I want to share is that there's always a path forward. So, whether you're a doctor, again, struggling, and even whether it's, addiction or something, or a heavy workload, and you just think it's time to make the donuts. You just need someone, like Michael will say, like, you can't read the label from inside the jar. And that's why having a coach, a therapist, a friend, even when you are a coach, like I've talked to even physician coaches, and we just have general conversations as friends. And then sometimes I can even say something to them and they're like, oh yeah, like that's a good idea. So just any of us, you need someone sometimes to just help you. Like your own thoughts aren't always really, like, your thoughts aren't always accurate the way it is. Like, there aren't facts, right? Everything you think isn't a fact. So just to be able to have someone else to be able to talk things over with and reflect you back, like Michael will say, is that true? Is it really true? What if the opposite is also true?
That's true. Yeah, it's interesting how a lot of people are, thinking twice about what their future is going to look like these days after the pandemic. And I think one of the main important things for them is to be connected to community, like you said, have connections with other people in this field and try to express their worries or difficulties in a way that communicates to others what's going on. Tell me a little bit about your books. Tell me a little bit about your work in this field. How did you think of like spreading out the word of what you're doing right now?
Well, it kind of just happened. So when I connected with doctors on LinkedIn, hoping that they could connect me with, or somehow have ideas for me so I could help my doctors by talking to them, I would say, oh, you should be connected with so and so, or you should be connected with so and so. And we kind of formed a LinkedIn family. And now at this point, like they call me a super connector or like the world's greatest connector of doctors. And when I talk to a doctor, I seem to know who they'd want to be connected with. So I just started having these conversations. And then when I started the podcast, it was the fall of 2023, I started interviewing physicians individually so they could share their stories. And then by the next spring, I started pairing them up because I always have a waiting list of like 60 to 70 doctors. And then I figured if I pair them up, they don't have to wait as long. And then the conversations are richer also. So, and sometimes, like by the time we're done recording, they've already sent the person I paired them up with, like a connection request and things like that. And then I was sending my own doctors a monthly update so they know they had a patient that was trying to help them. And then that turned into a Stand Up for Doctors Substack newsletter the summer of 2024. So now more people can see my monthly advocacy updates. And then it was a year ago, January, that we reached out to the first 15 doctors who were guests on my YouTube channel to rate this book. It's called White Coats, Courageous Hearts, True Stories of Doctors Reclaiming Their Humanity in a System That Challenges It. And Kevin MD wrote the endorsement on the back. And again, they're just wonderful real stories of doctors, sharing. It's kind of like chicken soup for the soul, that they're only a few pages, but they're honest, but also offer messages of hope. And that's what we need. And then we continued on because now I have almost 150 episodes. So we reached out to the next group of people who were guests. And this one is 11 physicians, 2 physician spouses, and 2 patients. And this is White Coats, Human Hearts, True Stories of Healing, Belonging, and the Courage to Stay Human in Medicine. And again, it's more real stories. Like doctors will say, I felt weird growing up, or I went into medicine for a sense of belonging, and at first I didn't find it. Or, what it really means to be a good leader. What does it mean to be a good doctor, quote unquote, good doctor. But then also sharing the perspectives of, being a doctor is a life of sacrifice also for the family. So hearing from physician spouses, and then also a gratitude from patients to patients and myself, write chapters in here. So when doctors, read these books, like some people have said, even in the endorsements, that it should be in the hands of every like med student, resident, early attending, like, every doctor, because they need this early on. Because again, there's action steps, like things that you can do to take care of yourself, move forward. And that's what I love it. It's all different perspectives. And then we're going to have another one because there's more stories to tell.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think you're so right when you say those things should be um, taught in medical school,
Mhm.
or at least have the medical students exposed to this kind of books, because I don't think there is anything out there to teach them what they can expect when they go out in practice from the mental point of view. Um, Now, you know, you reached a point right now that you connected so many people, you learn and heard a lot of stories, and you came from a background that you were successful in what you were doing? Do you consider yourself successful now?
That's a really interesting question. And what people will say is you never know the impact. You'll never truly know the impact that you're making. So sometimes, in all honesty, if you go by outward metrics, it doesn't necessarily appear. So, like at first, my episodes were only on YouTube, and it's more like that LinkedIn family audience that I've developed, and I hadn't find a way to, like go viral or anything like that, right? So the metrics by that don't look amazing, or even again to this point, because since I don't have a mark, I was walking around teaching little kids how to hop on one foot and do sit-ups. So I didn't plan on doing any of this, and I don't have a business background. So even learning and understanding how to market the books so they get into more hands than the people in our circle, I'm still trying to figure those things out. So by some outward metrics, it wouldn't maybe necessarily appear so, but every day, and I'm not exaggerating to say this, but if I'm like on LinkedIn or having Zooms or having conversations, like a day doesn't go by that doctors don't thank me from the bottom of their heart. And but if you go by that, who in the universe like has doctors thanking them every day? And then it's every so often I'll get like a private message, and it could be on LinkedIn, where one doctor I didn't know, we were technically connected, but we had never had a conversation. And they said I was driving in the car. I read because I have an introductory episode, and I in 20 minutes I tell my story to another doctor who was also a patient of my doctor, and they said they started crying like for what I went through, for what happened, but also that I was choosing after going through what I have to stand up and advocate for doctors. So, and she says it gave her hope. So, if she hadn't shared that, I would never know. And other things like that have happened. So, yeah, I would say I think so.
I think you are, and I think you are hopefully in just your beginnings of doing this type of mission, I would say, for the profession itself. Um, Now, would you, what kind of advice would you give to yourself with what you know right now and what you've been through? If you would think back to when you started this thing, what kind of advice would you give to yourself?
Well, sometimes I still have like Dr. Michael Ernst, my physician coach in my head. And one thing is to just keep going. Yeah, right. Because sometimes you can get frustrated or discouraged, and to just keep going. Or another thing he's shared with me is, obstacles are great. They just show you which way not to go. And at the time, you can get really frustrated, because I don't recall if I've already mentioned I'm hosting a physician retreat this fall, and we have been planning it for a whole year, and then the venue is being bought out next month, and I had to pivot, and I was like, oh no, but we have a wonderful new venue that in some ways I think is even better. So that speaks to when you hit an obstacle, to again just keep going.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Kim. I really compel you for your optimism, for your you know, all the good things that you're bringing to the profession right now. And I think we need people like you to kind of bring people together. In I think there are very few people like you out there, and they should be more. And I think you should get out in the world and show how things can be done. We don't necessarily have the doctors in general have necessarily have the ability of connecting themselves, or be some kind of a group that can act together. So we need we need people like you definitely to do that. How can people reach out? How can get in touch with you and see more of your work?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. So I do have a website, standupfordoctors.org. So the two main tab pages that your listeners will be interested in is the books tab, and they'll love it because there's a picture of every single doctor with how to reach out to them for both of the books, and also links. The books are available on Amazon and Kindle and paperback, and we would love reviews. That's how they'll one way that they'll get into more hands. And also on that, on standupfordoctors.org, there's an inaugural physician retreat page, and that's going to be Columbus Day weekend. And I also can offer your listeners a special coupon code until we're sold out, so I can tell you that, when we're done. And then they can see all of the speakers, and it's actually a lot of the a lot of the doctors who wrote chapters in the books will be leading topics and activities. And Dr. Simon Craig is coming all the way from Australia to give the keynote. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so that's one way. And then I'm also Kim Downey. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. And then our episodes are available on YouTube, Spotify, and now Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music. So if you just even Google, if you forget all of that and you just Google Stand Up for Doctors or Kim Downey, you'll find me.
Absolutely. I compel everyone to go look it up and listen to your thing. It's very infectious. Your optimism and your uh, power of conviction is it's something that we need. Thank you so much for being here, Kim. Wish you very good luck, and I hope more people will reach out to you.
Well, and thank you for this opportunity. I genuinely appreciate it, and I loved our conversation.
Thank you.
Are you a busy medical professional striving to excel in life and work? Stellar Success Podcast brings you the habits and insights of top leaders in medicine and beyond. Discover strategies for balance, growth, and fulfillment in every episode. Follow us on Instagram at Stellar Success Podcast for daily inspiration. Start your journey to success today. Subscribe to the YouTube channel now.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.